Alberta's first ever Chit Chat presentation. My name is Jason Switner. I'm the editor of Nature Alberta magazine, and I also contribute to Nature Alberta communication efforts across all sorts of other platforms, including this one tonight. Someone made the mistake of telling Steph that I speak in public from time to time, so she asked me to handle this introduction and talk a bit about what nature has going on these days. So tonight we're going to hear from 6 storytellers in the Pecha Kucha style. That means that every presenter shares 20 images and has 20 seconds to talk about each one. So 400 seconds total, just under 7 minutes to tell their story. Just keep things very lively, moving along very quickly at a fast pace. I'm really looking forward to experiencing this just as an audience member. This is my first Pecha Kucha too. Thank you very much to all our storytellers for joining us this evening and sharing their experiences. And thank you to everyone for joining us this evening from wherever you are. Most of you probably have a pretty good idea of what Nature Alberta is all about, but for the benefit of anyone new to the organization or any folks who wandered into this Zoom room out of curiosity or plugged in the wrong meeting ID somehow, Nature Alberta is a community connected by a love of nature. Our mission is to be a strong voice and an active champion for the greater appreciation and conservation of Alberta's natural environment. Now, we do this mainly through educational and outreach activities. That takes all sorts of forms. For example, our quarterly Nature Alberta magazine. Can I show this guy again? There he is. That's our bear. Nature Alberta magazine, family nature nights that provide real up close and personal experiences to inspire the next generation of nature lovers. And now these days in our Zoom reality, presentations like this one and our Nature Network speaker series. We're the hub of a network of nature clubs and organizations located throughout the province. Several representatives from these groups are among this evening's storytellers. Welcome. These clubs all have their own missions to explore and engage and inspire as well. And through our Nature Network, we support one another, we can share news and events, and create a unified voice in support of Alberta's natural heritage. Now, most of our events and programs, like this evening, are offered free of charge to Nature Alberta members and the general public. We're a nonprofit registered charity. And of course, like a lot of nonprofits have experienced throughout the pandemic, we haven't been able to run some of our face-to-face fundraising activities over the couple of years. And we're feeling that financial squeeze. But we have some positive things to talk about on that front. Even before COVID, we were working on securing our financial future. Through the Edmonton Community Foundation, we established the Nature Alberta Endowment Fund. Now, what's an endowment fund? Well, the way it works is contributions into that fund are invested, and those investments pay dividends year after year. So what that does is provides us with a stable and sustainable source of funding that we can rely on that supports our outreach and education programs well into the future. And what's really cool about this, the great news is right now we have an incredible opportunity to really bulk up this fund. Thanks to a series of funds matching programs until the end of this year, December 31st, 2021, every donation to the endowment fund will be matched 6 times. Every dollar, 6 to 1. $25 becomes $150. $50 becomes $300. If you donate the odd sum of $167, that works out to $1,000 worth of impact. So every donation goes a long way. This is an amazing opportunity to stretch those charitable donation dollars this giving season. Now, you can get all the details on that on our website at naturealberta.ca, and we'll also put up a direct link in the chat. To help out with the bulking up of that fund, we've gotten a little creative this year. For the month of November, we're running our first ever online silent auction. It's absolutely packed with items and experience curated with nature lovers in mind. We're talking nature-themed artwork and decor, useful stuff for backyard birders, expert-guided nature hikes, boat trips, lots of great stuff. If you're here early, you might have seen me scrolling through a few of the items there. But if, again, there's a link to that, it's a direct link in the chat. It's a great opportunity to get some holiday shopping done for all those nature lovers on your list, especially if one of them is you. Get yourself an early stocking stuffer or two. And again, every winning bid will be multiplied 6 times. So every bid just makes a huge impact. I can't stress that enough. You can check out the auction again at naturealberta.ca. There's, as I said, a direct link in the chat. But if you go to our website, the first thing you'll see is a big colorful banner image all about the e-auction. And if you let that image rotate out, the next one is all about the endowment fund. So all this information is really easy to find on our website, naturealberta.ca. All right. Steph, no objection to starting the presentation proper? Okay, I think you've heard quite enough out of me. So let's commence with this evening's presentation. First of all, I'd like to thank our sponsors, the Alberta Conservation Association, Nature Canada, Environment and Climate Change Canada, and TD Friends of the Environment Foundation. We also want to acknowledge that this event is hosted in Treaty 6 territory, traditional gathering place of diverse First Nations, Métis and Inuit people who stewarded these lands for thousands of years. As I mentioned, every storyteller this evening will have about 7 minutes for the presentation. There'll be a brief opportunity for audience questions after each segment, about 3 minutes, and also time for questions at the end after everyone is presented. So if you have a question, please write it in the chat. And if we don't get to it right after that storyteller segment, we'll definitely circle right around to it at the end. Closed captioning is enabled for this presentation. You can activate it using that little CC button at the top or bottom of your Zoom screen, depending on what sort of device you're watching on. So if you find that helpful, great. And if you find it distracting, you can turn it off with the same button. Someone asked about whether this is being recorded. Yes, the presentation is being recorded for future sharing. Please keep an eye on our social media for that. And also for updates on future events and club news and online auction highlights, everything Nature Alberta and the Nature Network has going on. You'll find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Now, I think that's plenty out of me. It is my pleasure to introduce tonight's first speaker. Steph Weizenbach joined Nature Alberta back in February as our Nature Network coordinator. She's been working hard to support Nature Alberta's member clubs through the Nature Network and has made great strides in getting everyone connected. And she's been sharing her enthusiasm for nature with the next generation running our Nature Kids program. Allow me to turn it over to Steph Weizenbach. Steph, if you're ready, please take it away.
Thank you, Jason. I'm just going to share my screen here. And can you all see some pretty flowers? Yeah, good. All right. Perfect. I was born in Ontario, grew up in Saskatchewan, and have spent my entire adult life in Alberta. I grew up spending my summers crossing the Beaver Dam to play in our tree fort at home, hunting for chanterelles to go with our moose steak dinner in Ontario, and fishing for northern pike for supper in Saskatchewan. I wasn't connected to nature. Nature was a way of life. I now have 2 kids of my own, and I'm trying my best to pass down that way of life to them. Here we were graced by the presence of a polyphemus moth in our front yard, tattered with poplar fuzz. I excitedly shared it with the kids, carefully removed its entangled fuzz, and we watched it fly away together. This summer, my 2-year-old daughter, Abby, caught her very own pike while she was sitting on my lap when the fish bit the line, so that counts as her first fish. And the girl loves eating fish for supper, so I made sure to explain the connection. It was then very important to her to watch her grandpa fillet the fish we caught. Even the other day, I was flipping through photos with the kids, and Abby saw this photo and said, "Fish, we eat it." She has formed a connection to nature and an understanding of how we fit in the picture. This connection will be memorable but foundational. I'm confident she will have a positive connection to nature throughout her life. The week after returning from Abby's big fishing trip, Nature Alberta hosted our grand finale, Family Nature Night. Family Nature Night events connect young families and newcomers to Canada to nature through positive guided experiences. Everything was wild and wet at our grand finale event, including the tank full of trout that Cold Lake's mayor drove up from their fish hatchery. We welcomed over 160 adults and kids to participate in some pretty awesome nature programming. After processing all of the guests with help of very organized volunteers, I heard the most amazing sound. The screams of excitement coming from the children was nothing short of magical. I know screams being a mother of a toddler and a preschooler, and these screams were the sounds of children making positive, lasting memories. I had to go see for myself. I rushed over to the trout touch tank and found kids of all ages and parents alike all huddled around several buckets of rainbow trout, squealing with excitement as they tried to touch or even pick up their slippery fish. Most of these kids didn't have a fisherman grandpa who connected them to the fish on their plate. I felt a great wave of gratitude to be delivering such a meaningful and important program to the community. Connecting these kids to nature with hands-on, memory-making experiences is inspiring the next generation of young naturalists and conservationists. I walked down the trail to the pond dipping stations. Families were learning about testing the water quality of lakes and ponds by Alberta Lake Management Society's executive director. Brad was explaining what those water quality results meant for life in the lake. Huddled around this table were families working in groups with their volunteer leaders to key out and identify species of aquatic plants. Kids were also helping dip in the pond from the dock. Other families were looking for creatures in buckets of water beside the pond and scooping them up into these amazing 3D viewers to get a closer look. Kids searched their identification charts to find out what these bizarre creatures were called. I walked back up to the live reptile and amphibian presentation, where they were explaining the difference between cold-blooded and warm-blooded creatures with the use of a phone app. C. Colin of the Alberta Amphibian and Reptile Conservancy is holding a turtle or a tortoise in his hand. And if you ask him the difference, he'll be there all night talking about cultural differences, which is just fascinating. Then he holds the presumed turtle up in front of Alyssa and uses his thermal app on his phone to actually show the kids that this reptile is in fact cold-blooded. Technology is such an amazing tool nowadays. Investigating nature is enriched with apps that can identify species by simply uploading a photo. I wandered back to the registration table to compare notes with my assistant, Abigail. I touched my first fish, she told me. I was flabbergasted. I didn't know what to say. Fish had been a part of my life from my childhood, likely even my memorable childhood, like my Abby. That's when it really hit me. Nature Alberta's Abigail is an educated, intelligent, experienced science educator who has been teaching others to connect with and protect nature. And she had just then touched her first fish. There is so much of nature to explore and connect with. Everyone's connection is unique, and there is always more to explore. It's true that nature never ceases to amaze me with new experiences and lifelong memories. Our connection to nature is not a one and done. Oh, I'm connected to nature, glad that's off my to-do list. No, it's an ongoing adventure. That's why I think the work Nature Alberta is doing is so important. Not only do we connect kids to nature, we also support a network of 40 nature clubs across the province that connect our community through a love of nature. These clubs are leading birding walks, mushroom forays, moth lighting, counting butterflies, planting native flowers, monitoring nest boxes, and so much more. I had the pleasure of leading a guided nature walk appreciation event for some of the experts and volunteers who participated in running Family Nature Nights. I can tell you that these are my people. They get me. They excitedly listen to my story of my visiting Polyphemus moth and share their similar experiences. I encourage each and every one of you to look through the member clubs on Nature Alberta's website and choose one that will enable you to connect with nature in a new way or share your love and excitement of nature with like-minded individuals. Nature provides us with so much to be fascinated about, so get out there and observe, investigate, and explore nature. All right, if anyone has any questions at all, they can type it into the chat there. Otherwise, we can move on to the next presenter. Susan, are there any, or Jason, are there any questions there?
No questions at this time, Your Honor.
All right.
There aren't, but I wanted to add one question, which was how many kids and parents came out to Family Nature Night this year now that we're finally able to do them again?
Yeah, we had, I think it was 566 parents and children this year, which was so amazing after spending so much time being away from everyone and not being able to run any type of events. It was amazing to get all of those families outside and really watching the kids being kids again and just having so much fun and connecting to nature. It was an amazing experience this summer. All right, so our next presenter is Geoff Holroyd, who is a retired research scientist with Canadian Wildlife Service and is currently the chair of the Beaverhill Bird Observatory, where they band migratory birds and steward the Beaverhill Lake Natural Area, all while engaging and educating the public. Welcome, Geoff.
Thanks, Steph, and hopefully this all works smoothly. There, my computer had to catch up. So this Pecha Kucha is the story of Beaverhill Bird Observatory changing lives while studying the environment, about a teenager living his dream and about pebbles in our shoes. The Beaverhill Bird Observatory started with a group of bird banders collaborating to form the second bird observatory in Canada, patterned after my early career at the Long Point Bird Observatory. My story really starts as a grandson of a coal miner in Yorkshire, England, sitting in a hospital window after having neck glands removed because of tuberculosis from drinking unpasteurized milk. I watched an English robin carrying food in the hospital garden hedge. A seed had been planted, a pebble in my shoe. At age 14, I wrote to the Ontario Bird Banding Association and was soon at Long Point banding my first bird, another pebble in my shoe. For 38 years, the Beaverhill Bird Observatory has monitored birds at Beaverhill Lake and tracked birds around the Western Hemisphere by banding them and using other technologies. We catch birds with mist nets, band them, and record various metrics that reflect their general condition. In spring and autumn, we band songbirds before noon and conduct a daily census, part of the Canadian Migration Monitoring Network. Sadly, we have tracked the decline of many species, including yellow warblers and least flycatchers. In the summer, we followed the methods from the Institute of Bird Populations to monitor avian productivity and survivorship of breeding birds. Returning banded adult birds indicate their annual survivorship, and the number of young later in the summer show us the breeding bird's success. And I'm talking faster than my slides. Should have put more words in. I thought I had too many. A colorful male northern oriole banded at BBO in May 2017 was found dead in October in Colombia, 3,000 kilometers to the south. Sadly, this male died after hitting a house window, highlighting one of many dangers that face our feathered friends. Through our observations of nesting birds, we learn about their breeding success, such as our 38 years tracking nesting tree swallows. In the natural area, we have documented a 10% decline in the number of young per pair, and there are 25% fewer pairs. Since 2002, BBO has monitored the autumn migration of saw-whet owls, showing that their numbers cycle with peaks about every 5 years. We banded our 5,000th saw-whet owl last Saturday evening. This autumn, we caught a nestling from South Dakota, had one of our owls caught just north of Saskatoon, and we caught an owl banded 2 years ago in Pennsylvania. These records describe the movements of a lot of our owls into eastern North America. I'm way ahead of my slides. Wasn't that way in practice. So you can see the three recoveries there, showing the birds coming north and then going east. During the time that I have studied birds, the number of birds in North America has declined by 30%. We have lost 2.9 billion birds. Some of the declines are due to pesticides, to the effects of climate change, such as severe weather, drought, floods, and fire, and habitat loss, and other reasons that we don't know yet. BBO's role is to monitor the number and condition of birds year after year. Declines are especially severe in shorebirds, grassland birds, and aerial insectivores. Whatever the causes of declines, the solutions will depend on people that care, people that are invested in nature and ready to take action, whether personal or societal, to reverse the causes. BBO is not just about birds and bird conservation, it's about hooking people on the environment, whether it's birds, bats, or butterflies. It's about pebbles. The Tucson Desert Museum's history book is titled Pebble in Your Shoe. If you have a pebble in your shoe, you pay attention to it. Thus, BBO wants to put a pebble in everyone's figurative shoe. However, pebbles are scarce at the Sandy Beaverhill Natural Area, so we use live birds instead. We don't put them in your shoe, but we get people to notice birds. In 2021, we built a new research and education center to better put pebbles in people's shoes. Many people have attended morning songbird banding and evening saw-whet owl trapping events through the past year. With solar power and social media, we have held live webinars about song and owl banding, and we have bird bite videos on YouTube. BBO is about introducing people to nature and birds in particular. Exclamations of delight echo every time someone sees their first live bird up close. Creating such lifelong memories is a key goal of BBO. Such experiences enhance people's lives and change some. We strive to influence young people in particular. Our one-week young ornithologist workshop takes up to 10 teenagers and immerses them in biology when they camp at BBO, and they learn alongside our biologists and invited experts. They get a hands-on experience on the life of field biologists while learning how to band birds, hear about bird biology, butterfly ecology, and this year, pond ecosystems. One father wrote, "You all need to step back and take a well-deserved bow because you are adding such great value to young people's lives. You have created such impact that because of your efforts, my daughter will grow from this experience and make decisions that truly benefit her future years. There are rare moments where you can say that you have made a difference in somebody's life, and this would be that moment." Another pebble cast. One of our interns wrote recently, "I cannot fully express in words how grateful I am to have had an internship at the BBO. It was actually a dreamy career goal for me, so this marks a very important milestone in my educational journey, and I am so thankful to have shared it with everyone at BBO. I learned so much during the process about bats and about collecting and writing and about research. I feel like I have got to grow my skills. I am confident the BBO will be part of my path into the future. Thanks again so much." Another pebble cast. The first prize at an Edmonton Christmas bird count contest 2 years back was one-day bird watching with Cam Finley and me at Beaverhill Lake. I met the couple who won about 10 years later, and they told me that day caused them to reconsider their lives. They moved to rural living and became naturalists and took up wildlife rehabilitation. BBO is an active participant in the Snow Goose Festival with guided hikes in the natural area and educational booths. The festival influences thousands of people. One of BBO's major donors were first introduced to bird watching and nature at a festival in the 1990s, which changed their lives and recreational interests. Another pebble cast. In winter, our Bird Smart program takes our message to schools, youth groups, and other public with live owl or falcon casting pebbles. Our messages are about interesting bird facts, the impact of human activity on birds, about climate change, and how each student can be an active participant in conservation solutions. 2.9 billion birds gone. The need for society's actions to save birds and reduce climate change are as great as ever. We encourage people to get outside, to walk, and get a free dose of vitamin N, nature. I urge you to think globally and act locally. Thank you for your interest.
Thank you, Geoff. If anyone has any questions for Geoff, you can type it into the chat there. I do have one question. I saw this summer that you had rebanded a yellow warbler, I believe. How often do you find or get information back about birds that are banded or reband or recapture a bird that has been banded?
Well, it really varies by size of bird, and if you're considering them being banded somewhere else, like the Northern Oriole in Colombia, that's about 1 in 10,000 that we get a long distance recovery like that. So not very common at all. If we're looking at birds returning to the natural area as breeding birds, then that's fairly regular. I can't give you an exact percentage. The yellow warbler that we noted this summer was actually last summer was 8 years old. So this is not quite a longevity record, but getting there. We also caught a saw-whet owl this year that was banded 3 years ago when it was 2 years old. So it's now at least 5 years old. So we also learn about the ages of the birds as well as they move. And then, as I mentioned in the talk, by taking various measurements, we can also look at their actual physical condition year after year.
Great, thank
So,
you.
sorry, Kathy Ann has a note that she's put in inquiring about bird-friendly coffee. Was that one of the notes that was in the list? Did I miss that one, or what's the
I
story
actually have
behind
to go
that?
back and look at the list, but bird-friendly coffee is very worthwhile. It means the coffee is grown under a canopy of native trees, and certainly something that people should achieve if they can do that.
Fantastic. Now that's it for comment or questions at the moment. If anyone has questions that come to them later for any of our speakers, save them, pop them in the chat, and we will get to them at question period at the end of all 6 presentations. So Steph will maybe lead us into the next speaker's introduction.
Yes. Our next speaker is Dave Ealey, who is a past president of Nature Alberta and is the current president of the Wagner Natural Area Society, who is a group of volunteers who steward the Wagner Natural Area to preserve its natural state. Welcome, Dave.
Hello, everybody. Thanks very much for the introduction. I'll try to share screen here. Okay. So working so far. So here's the welcome sign to Wagner Natural Area. The site is named after Bill Wagner, the former owner, who was involved with turning it into a natural area starting in 1975. The Wagner Natural Area Society began involved with in 1983. And here's from the air the scene of Wagner Natural Area, showing intense central part is coniferous forest, marl ponds, and pattern fen. Here's what is the unique landscape of Wagner, the marl ponds. These features are basically parts of the boreal forest. Most of the boreal forest is 200 to 300 miles north of Edmonton, and here we have some right in the Edmonton area. So Wagner Natural Area is a story about earth, fire, wind, and water. Earth is the marl, and the marl is a calcium carbonate material that's deposited in the bottom of these ponds and has become an important part of our natural area. Fire, more specifically, the absence of fire, has been very important in ensuring that we have old growth forest in the natural area. Under wind, you can see the prevailing winds have led to extensive blowdown in the natural area. This is part of the renewal of the forest. Thankfully, we don't have fire because we don't have adjacent area where fire could, or where the forest could renew the burnt out areas. But the fire, the wind and other I guess, agents of change, wildlife, porcupine chewing, woodpecker debarking, all lead to changing the structural integrity of the forest into organic energy. Water is undeniably the most important factor in the persistence and the sustaining of the Wagner Natural Area. This diagram shows the 7-kilometer long area that extends south of Wagner Natural Area and forms the groundwater recharging of our marl ponds. This is an example of what happens when the intense pressure of the groundwater flow is actually forced to the surface in the middle of the winter. Minus 20 degrees, it bubbles up through the cold snow and ice. To create these landscapes, we find with the natural area, we've got specific characteristics of the water that lead to the right conditions for the vegetation that forms, and it allows us an opportunity to show, demonstrate the characteristics of the boreal forest in this landscape. This is a Marl Pond trail, and we have a short section of boardwalk that protects the sensitive habitat. The yellow lady slipper is our emblem, and it's an important species for us to make use of because it's such an easy species for people to see. It's beautiful, it's relatively abundant, and it allows us to talk about the characteristics of the orchids that we have in the natural area. Here's another orchid, the round-leafed orchid, and you can just see this image here is a come hither to the necessary pollinator. We have more than half of the orchids that occur in the province in Alberta that occur in the natural area. Here's two of my favorite plants in the Wagner Natural Area, common butterwort and oblong-leaved sundew, both carnivorous species, which are a delight for us to be able to show young students about the nature of species that adapt to the environment in special ways. We have very few spots where you get waterfowl. And here's a family of northern shovelers on one of our few beaver ponds. The natural area is a site where we have the opportunity to do public education and outreach. This is one of our roles as the volunteer steward for the natural area. The fun that we have showing off the natural area is one of the great opportunities for having a site to share with people. We also have duty as site management. One of our summer students there in good spirits, dealing with a rather difficult job as we're trying to eradicate pale yellow iris on the edge of the natural area. And research. This is research and monitoring is a key part of one of the roles that we play as volunteer stewards. Here's our former science director, Derek Johnson, navigating through the forest and taking out his vegetation plot. So hopefully there's an opportunity for people to come out and enjoy the natural area and to get to know it as those of us that are the managers do. This is one of the scenes along the natural area, Marl Pond Trail. And as we prepare for our 40th anniversary, of Wagner Natural Area. Note the 40 spider webs here. We hope you have an opportunity to come and visit and learn to appreciate the natural area. It's a place of spiritual nourishment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dave. A couple of questions from folks. Ellen is wondering if there are any accessible trails at Wagner Natural Area.
Yes, the Marl Pond Trail is the main trail that we have for public visitation. Basically, we have taken the management approach of protecting the sensitive core area of the natural area and inviting the public to travel along the edge of the Marl Pond and through the coniferous forest, near the northeast end of northwest part of the natural area. That's where we've invested most of our attention to bringing in visitors and where we hold a number of our tours. I didn't hear you. I think you were on mute there.
Apologies. A follow-up to that, Jeremy would like to know if the sundews can be found on the Marl Pond Trail.
The sundews are not very often found on the Marl Pond Trail. They're actually more often seen in the interior when we've done some vegetation monitoring plots. But there are places where there's extensive moss that can be examined by people that travel along the trail. If the conditions are wet enough, we're hoping that some of the marl ponds are more productive of different species, but you're not going to be likely to find the sundews there.
Understood. And Lorna finally asks if you can tell us precisely where the Wagner Natural Area is located.
Wagner is located halfway between Spruce Grove and Edmonton, just on the south side of the Highway 16. And the aerial view that I showed, the Highway 16 is along the north side of the natural area.
Perfect, thank you. Steph?
Yes, I have one more question for you, Dave. You mentioned that Wagner is home to half of the orchid species in Alberta, and I was just wondering how many species is that? How many orchids are there at Wagner?
There are 16 to 17 species. It depends on the taxonomy, I understand, that we have at Wagner, and there's in the order of 24 plus species in the province. So we know that there's more than half that occur in the province. Some of them are quite small and hard to find, but there are several that you can find even along the Marl Pond Trail. And both the ones I showed, the yellow lady slipper and the round-leafed orchid, as well as pale coral root, are commonly seen along the Marl Pond Trail.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dave. So our next speaker is Martinosis, who is a past president of the Alberta Mycological Society, an organization whose members are fascinated by fungi. Who isn't fascinated by fungi? So you can join them for workshops, forays, and wild mushroom dinners. Welcome, Martin.
Great, thanks a lot. Here, let me screen share. That's not what I wanted. There we go. Perfect. Is that working or is it not working?
I don't see your screen.
Here, let me try it again. It worked earlier today.
Sure, let's try again.
Are we getting anywhere now?
No, I'm still seeing you. So if you click on your screen share and then you have to click on which tab or screen
There we go. Yep.
you need to share and then click on, there you go. We're entering your screen sharing. Thank you.
Excellent. And I just wanted to say, I've been at Wagner many times. It's a beautiful place. Everybody should go. You get really in touch with stuff. And the interesting thing, actually, all of the orchids that are out there, orchids are mycorrhizal with mushrooms. So they rely on mushrooms so they can actually survive and fungi. So we see that relationship happening. Anyways, my talk today is called Jack's Amanita. And here, let me get the slideshow going. There we go. So back in September 2010, I was invited to do a walk and talk at the George Pig Garden near Glen Evis at Lac St. Anne. The Pig Garden is an interesting place. It was named after George Pig, a pioneer farmer and an amateur botanist whose family farmsteaded the land way back. The homestead is typically aspen parkland habitat, which encroaches the boreal forest. So we had a mix of all kinds of trees from aspen to patches of spruce and pine. George Pig, the botanist, added many unique trees and more exotic plants to the homestead, which eventually became the Pig Gardens. After a brief talk about mushrooms and their relationship with trees and a quick discussion on collecting rules, I sent about 25 people out searching for mushrooms through the woods, and so we can bring back some samples and talk about them in a little bit more detail. Being in the end of September with the cooler nights, we had lots of things come in, from puffballs to shaggy manes and shaggy parasols. Is that going at 20 seconds, or am I trying to? Perfect. Okay. And all kinds of different mushrooms, from puffballs to shaggy manes, little brown mushrooms. And one of the mushrooms that came out was this mushroom that you see there. I quickly thought it was a tricholoma, which is a white spored mushroom with notched gills, and packed it away. I thought I'd look it up later because it's should be fairly easy because it's so distinctive. The next day, I picked up Dr. Sean Abbott. He's a mycologist from formerly, from the Botanic Gardens, and we were off to do a foray, the Lenny Shalkwick Memorial foray down in the Bow Valley. So I picked him up, and off we went, and we're picking up David Mallock. He was the former curator of the Canadian Mycological Herbarium in Ottawa, and I shared the mushroom with him, and I kind of said, if anybody recognized it, and Sean did right away, and he said it was kind of like standing with someone, looking across the room at a familiar face, and then asking, "Who is that? Is that I know the person, but I've never been introduced." So, but in spite of the familiarity, Sean couldn't get a name on the mushroom either. So David Mallock also said he had never seen it before, and we kind of decided it was probably a tricholoma and maybe a floccularia. And actually, these gentlemen, I call them the three wise men, Scott Redhead, David Mallock, and Dr. Jim Gins. They're the three kind of leading experts in Canada on fungi. And none of them could actually give us any insight on this. And they were down for the Shalkwick Memorial foray, because they work closely with Lenny, who kind of is Alberta's our star mycologist. Anyway, so the mushroom kind of died, and a year later, I got actually a year before, in June, there's some members of the Alberta Mycological Society named Jack and Nora Jones who'd moved to Colorado, and they participated in a BioBlitz near Fort Collins. Jack Jones found this unique mushroom here down in the corner, and they couldn't really figure out what it was, and he called it an amanita. Here we see a white variety of the Amanita muscaria, and they kind of named it Jack's Amanita, and they took it to the herbarium in at the Denver Botanic Gardens, where this lady, Vera Evenson, who is a very accomplished mycologist, she looked at that mushroom and said, man, this is something that's a little bit unique and special. So she had worked with a couple of other mycologists, Dr. Coop and a Dr. Baroni. And what they did is they did the genetics to it, and they came up with a really interesting species called Smithiomices. And it's a mushroom that typically grows in and around mountain mahogany. And as we look at this mushroom, this is certainly something that we don't have here in Alberta. So about a year after that, I got a call from the Pacific Northwest Council, the Key Council, and they are a group of professional and amateur mycologists about this new mushroom being published. And it had a name of Smithiomices crocodilinus. And that was this mushroom. And I thought, by gum, that's the same mushroom that we found at the pig garden a couple of years ago. But ours isn't growing in a desert or with mountain mahogany. So anyways, finally, the mushroom was published as Cercopomices crocodilinus. And of course, I love Smithiomices because it was a reference to Alexander Smith, who in fact described our provincial mushroom here, the Lexinum boreal. But any which way, we finally have a name that came 2.5 to 3 years later for our mushroom. So the story doesn't really end there. In 2014, we got a posting on our forum from Daniel and Noel, who said, I found these mushrooms in Red Deer growing in the river valley in a mixed forest. Can anybody identify them? And sent this lovely set of photographs. Well, I'll tell you, not very many people in the world can identify it, but luckily I could. And that's thanks to Jack Jones, Vera Evenson, Dr. Krupp, Dr. Baroni, Pacific Northwest Council. And after a flurry of communications, Daniel no longer had the mushroom. So we had sightings of this mushroom in Alberta, but we didn't actually have a species. And so finally now in 2020, Candace Cullum visiting the Big Valley Cemetery found a collection of these Jack's Amanitas growing amongst Carigana, and again, not with mountain mahogany. So finally, we've got a collection that was saved, and we've dried it, and we've included in the 2021 Lac La Biche collection, where our foray was this year. It's very interesting that none of the collections found in Alberta are at all associated with mountain mahogany. So we've got lots and lots to learn about this really rare but very unique mushroom. So that's it for me. That went quickly.
Thank you, Martin. I want to know, is this one edible?
Well, I hope that we could find enough of them that I could convince somebody to try them. I have a sneaking suspicion it is, because it doesn't come from a family or a genus where we know that there's any poison mushrooms. And it looks it's so similar to floccularias, which are actually rare but very delicious.
Another question for you, Martin, from Mel. He's wondering what your Edmonton area trail recommendations for beginner mycophiles are.
Well, some of the best trails are in the White Mud Creek Valley. There's just some amazing mushrooms to be had in there, and some really rare stuff that we don't find, that we've only got one of for Alberta. And so we've got some really unique habitat right here in Edmonton, in the Edmonton area.
Excellent. Lorna was asking if you could repeat the name of the area by Lac Saint Anne.
It was the George Pegg Gardens, And it's a
George
lovely
Peg.
little location. Everybody should go out and have a look there. It's they've got George Peg planted trees from all over the world, and so all kinds of trees that you typically don't find here in the province.
That's the George Peg Gardens. Thank you. Mel was also wondering if there are any books you'd recommend for a beginner to read in preparation for next season.
Yeah, the best book is a long time publication of the Lenny Shalkwood book, Mushrooms of Western Canada. Mostly because she has all the local species, and so as opposed to getting a mushroom book that has mushrooms from all over North America, she really gets the ones that are picked in this area. So she did a lot of her work right around Sandy Lake. So we have real local mushrooms in her book.
Good. There are a few other questions, but we're going to move on. So we'll cycle back to those at the end of the presentation. Before we go, though, my colleague makes a very good point. There is a little miniature mushroom foray in the latest issue of Nature Alberta magazine. So be sure to go to our website, naturealberta.ca/magazine, where you can check that out and go on a virtual mushroom foray with the folks from the Alberta Mycological Society. Thank you very much, Martin. Steph?
Our next presenter is Laureen Echiverri, who is a board member with the Boreal Avian Research and Conservation Association, a newly incorporated club and Nature Alberta's newest member club. BARCA will enhance awareness and opportunities for research and conservation with a special emphasis on boreal birds. Welcome, Laureen.
Thanks, Steph. I'll just share my screen. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
So as Steph mentioned, I'm a member of BARCA, and I wanted to introduce our organization by starting off with a story about the American kestrel. So the image here shows American kestrel. It's a small falcon found throughout North America. They're aerial hunters that require access to both open grasslands or farmlands with short vegetation and sparse trees. So currently, kestrels are pretty numerous, but some research suggests that some of their populations are declining. And one of the limiting factors for this species is the availability of nesting sites. So they're a secondary cavity nester, and most often they use abandoned woodpecker cavities to lay their eggs and raise their young. Fortunately, kestrels accept man-made wooden nest boxes. So we can place these nest boxes in suitable foraging habitats that may lack the natural nesting sites that these birds require. And in this way, we can potentially increase the breeding population size of these birds. So nest boxes can be a pretty effective conservation tool. And the benefits are twofold, since nest boxes also give us an opportunity to study their breeding patterns. So we can monitor how many eggs they're laying per nest and how successful their nesting is. So for example, in this picture here, you can see 5 brown kestrel eggs and 2 bluish white eggs, which are actually starling eggs. So there's a bit of nest parasitism going on in that picture. So this is where our organization comes in. We're interested in collecting long-term data on birds that inhabit the boreal forest. And we're hoping that this long-term monitoring data can inform conservation efforts for these birds. So again, our organization is called Boreal Avian Research and Conservation Association, or BARCA for short. So in one of our programs, we've placed nest boxes for American kestrels in the Capital Power Industrial Area near Genesee, Alberta. So they actually had existing nest boxes in the area, but we moved them to sites with better foraging, and the occupancy rates of these nest boxes really went up. So we've been monitoring their occupancy and nesting success. So this year, we were able to monitor 19 nest boxes, and of the 19, 6 were occupied by kestrels. So we were able to band 6 adults and 15 young kestrels. So the young kestrels are pictured here. So by banding these birds, we can hopefully learn more about their nesting success and their nesting preference over the years. So we can answer questions such as, do the adults keep the same nest site every year, or do they just come back to the same general area? And do the young come back to the same area or nesting site? So these types of questions are what we're hoping to address with long-term monitoring of these nest boxes. So we're also interested in the ecology of other bird species. So we have similar programs for other birds. So another example is the great gray owl, pictured here. Great gray owls need mature forests with trees for nesting. So they can be vulnerable to land use change. And so in both privately owned properties as well as public lands, we set up nesting platforms for great gray owls. And this spring, we monitored 6 nesting sites, 2 of which were natural and 4 were nesting platforms. And we were able to band 4 young owlets. So that's a young great gray owlet. So of the 4, 2 were in a natural nest and 2 were in a nesting platform. So we also set up nest boxes for northern saw-whet owl. So you can see a northern saw-whet peeking out of that nest box there. Northern saw-whet owls are also cavity nesters. So much like the American kestrels, they rely on existing cavities. And so again, nest boxes provide that nesting habitat in areas that may not have those large trees with cavities for them to nest in. And so this spring, we were able to monitor 22 boxes and 4 were occupied. And we were able to band 1 adult owl and 12 of these owlets pictured here. So again, we plan to monitor these boxes every year to get that long-term data. And we also want to expand the number of boxes we have out. So those are the projects that our organization currently have ongoing. And so those are primarily centered around the breeding ecology of birds. But we're also interested in monitoring bird migration. And obviously we're going to do the saw-whet owls because they're the most adorable. So to monitor saw-whet owl migration, we did banding at 2 sites this fall. So we were able to band 43 owls this fall, and one of them was a foreign recapture. And in one of the nights, we even caught this long-eared owl. So again, this is something that we plan to do every year. And we also want to eventually allow for public participation. Right now, we're just looking for a location that is close to Edmonton and open to the public. So you might be thinking that our name should be Boreal Raptor Research, since that was all pretty raptor heavy. But we do intend to start a songbird monitoring program during the spring and fall migration. As we've seen with the other organizations, songbird banding really provides valuable scientific data, but it also creates an opportunity for people to get up close with the birds and learn the identification and learn more about their ecology. So that's a ruby crown kinglet there that we caught this past fall. Currently, some of our programs offer opportunities for public involvement. So for example, in the image here, you can see a group doing nest box checks. We're hoping to have more educational and outreach activities. Ultimately, we want to be able to share our appreciation for nature and these birds to the general public, and also hopefully provide students, especially post-secondary students, an opportunity to gain some field experience. These programs that we have running wouldn't be possible without the collaboration with landowners. We've been fortunate enough to have 12 landowners and companies offer us access to their land. And so one landowner that's pictured here even provided us with northern saw-whet owl boxes. Another has helped us with nest box placement and monitoring. And these collaborations with the landowners and managers of public land are really essential to efforts like this, efforts that are geared toward research and conservation. And so we're very grateful for the generosity of these landowners, and we hope to develop more of these collaborations. So thank you for your time, and please feel free to contact us if you'd like to learn more and get involved with our organization. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laureen. Question for you. Folks are wondering if there's a website for BARCA.
Not yet. We're working on that right now. So we literally just started, I think it was June. So we're still very young, but yes, that is a work in progress. In the meantime, I guess I could provide my email. Would that be?
Yes, please. Someone else has asked how they can get in touch with you.
So I just placed it in the chat box.
Perfect. Thank you. And welcome to the Nature Network.
Thank you.
Steph?
Perfect. Thank you, Laureen. Lots of cute owl photos there. That was very joy. And I love the little cute kinglets too, the little songbirds. Thank you. Our final keynote storyteller is John Acorn, who is an internationally renowned scientist, naturalist, author, and broadcaster, well known as the Nature Nut. I've personally learned a great deal from U of A professor John Acorn. Here at Nature Alberta, we are very fortunate to have John and his enthusiastic and whimsical approach to sharing his passion for nature on board as our patron. Welcome, John.
Thanks, Steph, and super nice to see you and all these other familiar faces and names. For the rest of you, I hope we get to meet in person someday. But there we go. I should be. Am I sharing now? Oh, for Pete's sake! Wait a sec. Am I sharing?
It looks like it's loading. It says, oh, there, I see your slides. Yes.
Okay, no, there was a little technical surprise there, but you know how these things are. Okay, what I want to talk about tonight is what I call high-tech ideas for low-tech naturalists. I think most naturalists think of themselves as, direct observers of nature, as low-tech people, with simple tools and simple needs. Is this really true, or is technology helping us? Well, even over the course of my brief existence, things like cameras and birding optics have improved immensely. I mean, I still like the old stuff, but it's just amazing how good modern cameras are and binoculars. And we tend to take these tools for granted because we use them the same way that naturalists did many decades ago. We basically, most of us take pictures of birds and flowers and mushrooms and things, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I want to go a little bit beyond that here tonight. Here's one thing you can do. You can add a filter to your camera that blocks all the visible light, allowing only the ultraviolet and the infrared to get through to the sensor. Now, some cameras work better than others, but this is really exciting because now you can see things that the human eye cannot see. And, well, for example, here's a butterfly. On the left, in visible light, it's a white butterfly with orange wingtips. These things live in the mountains in Alberta. On the right, in ultraviolet, it's a dark butterfly with light wingtips. And that probably means something to these butterflies and how they find each other. Marvelous. Some flowers have ultraviolet patterns. Dandelions are dark in the center, light on the outside. I know a woman who can see these patterns with her own eye, unaided. This is a drawing she made. She sees dandelions with blue-green centers. For her, there's no need for a filter. For the rest of us, it kind of helps. What's this terrible picture? It's a snowy owl in the ultraviolet, showing that it's just as white as the snow around it. Some people have suggested that some white animals are not camouflaged against the snow in the ultraviolet, but at least the snowy owl clearly is. You aim an ultraviolet flashlight at some organisms and they glow, they fluoresce. Scorpions are well known to fluoresce. This is the scorpion in southern Alberta. And people looking for scorpions can find them very easily with one of these UV flashlights. I've aimed my UV light at almost everything I can think of. Here's a sow bug, a woodlouse. I decided, no, they don't fluoresce. But I just heard from another naturalist 2 days ago that if you flip them over, the underside fluoresces on some species and not others. There's so many things we can discover with relatively simple tools. Speaking of which, here's a water beetle that fluoresces. Look at how beautiful it is. And the plants behind, why are they kind of reddish? Those are green plants. Green leaves fluoresce red in the ultraviolet, and it's easy to see with some simple tools. You go to the other end of the light spectrum and into the infrared. This is a midsummer picture of the Bow River in Canmore. Why are the trees white? It's not because it's winter, it's because they're reflecting the infrared. It's a whole new world and very enjoyable to explore. You can use that infrared light for night vision. A lot of people have trail cameras, and this photograph of a coyote was taken not with a flash, but with an infrared beam reflecting in the animal's eyes. I really like my trail cameras. Here's a coyote in the backyard. There's so many trail cameras everywhere now. If nothing else, I think they've demonstrated to us that there's probably not any such thing as the Sasquatch in Alberta. About to pounce on a vole there. Further into the infrared, you get the thermal imaging. Steph showed us a phone app. Oh man, I got to get that phone app. These are pictures of a cliff on the North Saskatchewan River on the left, the Alberta grain terminal on the right, showing how they warm up in the sun in the wintertime, and maybe that has something to do with why the birds like them. And then with your camera, many cameras, you can mess with time as well. I've been studying butterfly flight, and this is 1/10 normal speed. Many cameras can do 1/10 normal speed now. Some of you have smartphones that can do 1/40th normal speed, and it's just built into your phone. Here's a tropical butterfly at the butterfly greenhouse at the University Botanic Garden, showing how this thing hovers. All you have to do is slow these things down, and you can start to see what they're doing in ways that we couldn't see, at least not in years past without special equipment. How about sound recording? Here's an inexpensive sound recorder mounted in a homemade parabola made out of a stainless steel salad bowl. It gives you great high-tech or high-resolution recordings of bird sounds. Steph, you might have tried this one at field school back in the day. Here's a water bug, and with an underwater microphone. Listen to that. That's the first recording ever of this common widespread bug that sounds kind of like an underwater cricket. And all you need is this waterproof microphone. Yeah, it's not that cheap, but it's fun. Ultrasonics sounds too high for us to hear. Bat detectors are also relatively easy to get. I don't know if there's a phone app, but you can buy this thing for less than $300 and monitor the bats in your backyard. Now, I know this isn't for everyone. It's kind of like, not all naturalists have a microscope, but if you try some of these things, I hope you enjoy them. I hope they enhance your understanding and your appreciation of nature, and who knows, maybe you'll discover something cool in the process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Don. That was very interesting and enlightening. There's a lot of devices there that I just would love to try out.
I'm just trying to help everybody spend their life savings here.
Yes.
Thank you very much, John. That was fascinating. Does anyone have any other questions for John? Pop them right in the chat there. And if not, or while you're coming up with them, we'll circle back to a few of the questions that some folks had for Martinosis of the Alberta Mycological Society. Josephine was wondering if you could repeat the name of that exotic white mushroom.
It's called Cercopomyces crocodilinus, and that's and it's named after actually the Greek god Cercopes, who was a mischief maker. He was a mythical Greek forest creature who mysteriously transformed himself into other things just to create mischief and confuse all those around. And that mushroom has been confusing a lot of people for a lot of years. So a really good scientific name for it.
Cercopomyces crocodilinus. Thank you. Rob is wondering if that mushroom could have been imported with one of the exotic trees in the garden.
We find it across across the board in Alberta in a number of different habitats. And this year we found it in with Carrigana and at the George Pegg Garden. It came out of the spruce pine complex. And I know I've seen them before, like 20 and 30 years ago in spruce and pine. So we know that in this case, it could have been because of the exotic trees at George Pegg, but I don't think that's the case right now for that specimen that we found.
Okay, thank you. Betty was hoping you could repeat the name and author of your book recommendation.
Again, the book is Mushrooms of Western Canada by Eleni Shalkwick, and Lone Pine has just republished it, I think, now for the 6th time. Yeah, marvelous book.
Excellent. So if someone's looking for it, they can look for it on Lone Pine Publishing. They should be able to track it down there.
And actually, also you can get it through the Mycological Society.
Oh, perfect. And someone is holding it up to their screen right there. Mushrooms of Western Canada. Thank you. And lastly, Nia was wondering about future mushroom forays. Where can folks find out about upcoming events and how they can participate?
Actually, if you Google wild mushrooms or the Alberta Mycological Society, we have lots of forays going on throughout the whole province. And every year we have what we call the Great Alberta Foray. Last year we had it in Lac La Biche, where a bunch of us come together and we do a fairly in-depth survey of the fungi around, and so you get to learn how to identify them. And these are mushrooms that we photograph and we dry and send off to the herbaria in Ottawa. So it's a good chance to learn your mushrooms and contribute to citizen science.
Excellent. And someone has just posted a website and Twitter handle in the chat as well. albertamushrooms.ca at abmycology on Twitter. Okay, I see a lot of thank yous coming in the chat, and I have to echo that. Thank you very much to all our storytellers. Nature Alberta's own Steph Weizenbach, Geoff Holroyd from Beaverhill Bird Observatory. Wave, so give a wave when we say your name. You earned it. Dave Ealey of the Wagner Natural Area Society. Martinosis, who we just heard from the Alberta Mycological Society. Laureen Echiverri from the Boreal Avian Research and Conservation Association. And of course, Nature Alberta patron, John Acorn. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight and sharing your stories. Can we get a silent muted round of applause from folks? We won't be able to hear it, but we can see it and feel it. Thank you so much. Thanks again to our sponsors for making this event possible: the Alberta Conservation Association, Nature Canada, Environment and Climate Change Canada, and TD Friends of the Environment Foundation. And most of all, thank you for joining us this evening. It has been an absolute pleasure to host this free event. I'll say it again, if you're in a position to help Nature Alberta keep promoting and protecting our province's natural heritage, we would really appreciate your support. And right now, for a limited time, just until the end of this year, until December 31st, 2021, all donations to the Nature Alberta Endowment Fund will be matched 6 times. So every single donation, even modest amounts, have a huge impact, and it's very, very much appreciated. We're also running our first ever online auction through the month of November with lots of items and experience handpicked for nature lovers. We'll put those direct links up again in the chat for anyone who missed them earlier. But you can also find all that information front and center on naturealberta.ca. Coming up tomorrow, the next session of our Nature Network speaker series, Nature Lethbridge presents Working as a Wildlife Biologist by Ted Naninga. Ted will share advice for people considering careers in the environmental industry and stories from a decade of fieldwork, from sun-soaked prairies to the dark boreal forest. You can find more info about that session and the Zoom link to it at naturealberta.ca/events. I just want to say thank you once again to our storytellers, to our sponsors, and especially everyone here for joining us this evening. Thanks once again, and have a great night.